It was supposed to be a long-planned road trip, a chance to escape the stress of work and to bond with my cat, Midnight. I had been planning for weeks, researching the best routes, and gathering all the necessary equipment for the trip. My car had been serviced and checked for any issues before the trip, and I had packed enough supplies for us to be self-sufficient for a few days. I had also been checking the weather forecast, and everything looked good for the duration of the trip. I had quit my job as an IT professional to take a break and travel for a year, and this trip was my first stop. Midnight, my black-furred cat, had been my companion for the past 5 years, but what people didn't know is that he was a rescue cat, who I found at an abandoned house. He had been living in that house for over a year, surviving on his own, and when I found him, he was malnourished and emaciated, but still full of life. I took him home and nursed him back to health, and since then we had been inseparable. We set off early in the morning, with the sun shining and the birds singing. We stopped at a few places, taking in the sights and sounds of the countryside, and Midnight seemed to be enjoying the trip as much as I was. We even stopped at a few small towns and had lunch at local diners, where people were fascinated by the idea of a traveling cat. But as the day went on, we drove deeper into the wilderness, and that's when the snowstorm rolled in, unexpectedly, blocking the road and trapping us in our car. We were stranded, with no cell service and no way to call for help. I had been caught off guard and didn't anticipate the severity of the storm. As the hours passed, Midnight and I huddled together for warmth, but the snow piled higher and higher, and the temperature dropped to dangerous lows. I tried to start the car, but the engine wouldn't turn over. I was running out of options, and I knew that if we didn't get help soon, we would both freeze to death. Just as I was about to lose all hope, I saw a light in the distance. It was a cabin, nestled in the woods. I pulled Midnight into my arms and trudged through the snow, my heart racing with relief. As I reached the cabin, I knocked on the door, and to my surprise, it was opened by my ex-girlfriend who had died a year ago. I started to question my own sanity, as the memories and the details she shared with me were eerily accurate. She told me about the time we went on a road trip to the mountains, where we got lost and had to spend the night in a cabin just like this one. She reminded me of the inside jokes we shared and the way we used to laugh together. The way she talked about our past relationship made it feel like it had just happened yesterday. But at the same time, it felt like I was trapped in a dream. Midnight, my cat, had vanished, and when I looked out the window, the storm had ceased, and the snow had melted. I turned to her, trying to make sense of what was happening. What is going on here? Where's Midnight? Why is everything so different? I don't understand. I exclaimed, my voice shaking with fear.
Shh. It's okay. Everything will be all right.
She replied, her voice calm and soothing.
You've been in a coma for the last 5 years, and Midnight passed away during that time. I've been by your side the whole time, but you couldn't hear me or see me. I had to watch you suffer, and I couldn't do anything to help you. But now you're awake, and we can be together again.
I was horrified, trying to process what she just said. No, this can't be true. This has to be a dream, a nightmare. I just saw Midnight. He was here with me, I swear.
I'm sorry, but it's true. You have to accept it and let go of the past. It's time for you to move on and be happy with me,
she said as she hugged me tightly. I was at loss of words and in shock, feeling trapped in a reality that I couldn't escape. Please, let me go. I can't stay here. I need to find Midnight. I need to find out the truth, I pleaded.
I'm sorry, but you can't leave. You belong here with me now. Midnight is gone, and you have to accept that.
I knew then that I had to escape this place, whatever it took. But as I tried to move, I felt an overwhelming sense of drowsiness, and I lost consciousness. I awoke sometime later, and as I struggled to escape this twisted version of reality, I came across a manifestation of Midnight, my beloved cat. At first, I was overjoyed to see my companion once again, but as I tried to approach, Midnight transforms into a terrifying creature that feeds on my regret and sorrow. I understood that this manifestation is not the real Midnight, but a manifestation created by the demon in order to weaken my resolve and make me accept my fate. Feeling renewed determination, I fought back against the demon, using all the strength and will I could muster. As I did so, the demon's grip on reality began to weaken, and the cabin and the surrounding landscape started to crumble and fade away. In the end, I emerged victorious, breaking free from the demon's grasp and finding myself back in the real world. Or so I thought. As I come to realize, the truth is far more shocking than I ever could have imagined. I wasn't in a coma, I was dead. The demon was death itself, and the twisted version of reality was the afterlife. The woman who claimed to be my lover was a guide sent by death to help me accept the fact that I had perished and move on. Midnight, my cat, was also dead, and his manifestation was my guilt for not being there for him during his final moments. I was trapped in this reality, unable to move on until I accepted my death and the past. Just as I was about to accept my fate and move on, something unexpected happened. The demon, death, was startled by a sudden jolt of electricity, and I felt my body convulsing. Suddenly, I was back in my body, alive and well. The doctors had managed to revive me. My loved ones were relieved and overjoyed. I was confused, trying to understand what had happened and if the previous experience was just a dream or reality. But as I looked around the room, I saw Midnight, sitting on a windowsill, looking at me with his big yellow eyes. After regaining consciousness, I was confronted by the doctor who was in charge of my care. He looked at me with a serious expression, and began to explain what had happened to me.
We found you unconscious on the side of the road, suffering from severe hypothermia and hypoxia. Your car had broken down and you were stranded in the middle of a snowstorm with no means of communication. We assumed that you were trying to reach a cabin nearby but got lost in the blizzard. Your vital signs were very weak and we weren't sure if you were going to make it. We had to perform CPR and use a defibrillator several times to revive you.
He went on to explain how the cold weather had caused my body to shut down and my organs to fail, which led to my death. He also said the medical team worked tirelessly to save my life. It was a miracle that I was alive after experiencing clinical death. The doctor warned me that I might experience physical and mental trauma from the incident and advised me to take some time to recover before returning to normal activities. The doctor also explained to me the severe damage caused by frostbite on my extremities.
You suffered from severe frostbite on your fingers and toes. Some of them had to be amputated to prevent further damage from spreading,
he said with a somber tone.
The cold temperatures and exposure to the elements had caused the tissue in those areas to die, and it was necessary to remove them to prevent infection and promote healing.
I felt a deep sense of shock and sadness as I processed this new information. The thought of losing parts of my body was overwhelming, and I couldn't help but think about how it would affect my daily life. The doctor noticed my distress and assured me that they had done everything they could to minimize the damage and that they would support me through my recovery and rehabilitation. He also explained that the state-of-the-art prosthetics were available, but the true test would be on how well I adapt to the changes and how much I was willing to learn. I knew it would be a long and difficult journey, but I was determined to overcome this obstacle and move forward. It was a harrowing experience, to say the least, but I was grateful to be alive. This experience had a profound impact on my perspective on death and my own mortality. The thought of dying and leaving behind loved ones, as well as the grief and pain caused by the loss of my girlfriend, weighed heavily on my mind. In the afterlife, I was able to see her again and it brought a sense of closure to me. Even though it was not the real her and it was a manifestation created by death, it was as if I got a last chance to talk to her and say goodbye. My girlfriend's death was not the result of an accident, instead it was from a battle with a long-term illness. She had been suffering from a chronic disease for years, and despite all of our efforts, her condition had gradually worsened over time. I watched helplessly as she struggled with the physical and emotional toll of the disease, and I felt guilty for not being able to do more to help her. I felt like a failure as her partner and I was consumed by guilt and regret. It was a heart-wrenching experience, to watch someone you love suffer and not be able to do anything to ease their pain. After her death, I was left with a deep sense of loss and sorrow, and I couldn't shake off the feeling that I could have done more to help her, or that I should have been able to save her. I struggled to accept her death and find closure, but the passage of time helped me to heal. I was able to find solace in the memories we shared, and in the knowledge that she was no longer suffering. The experience of losing someone you love helped me to appreciate the preciousness of life and to cherish every moment we have with our loved ones. It also taught me that sometimes, all we can do is to be there for them, to support and love them, no matter what happens. It's a hard lesson but an important one that helped me to become a more empathetic and compassionate person. I was finally able to let go of the guilt and regrets I had about her death and our relationship. This allowed me to find peace and move on from the past. The reality of my own death and subsequent revival only reinforced this newfound understanding and appreciation for life. It made me realize that death is a natural part of life, and that it's important to cherish and make the most of the time we have with the people we love. As I was leaving the hospital and going back to my normal life, I felt a sense of unease, like something was off. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. I tried to ignore it and move on, but it persisted. One day, while going through my possessions, I found a small notebook among my things that I had no recollection of ever seeing before. Inside were detailed notes and drawings that looked like they were made by me. They were about the cabin, the storm, and my girlfriend, and it included details of the trip. I was confused and couldn't understand how I could have written them, as the doctor had mentioned I had eventually succumbed to the elements, and I don't recall ever writing anything during this experience. I was determined to find out the truth and started to investigate the strange occurrences. I retraced my steps and talked to people who lived nearby, but none of them had any information that could help me. Every lead I found just led to more questions. As I delved deeper into the mystery, I started to realize that there may be more to my experience than what I originally thought. The memories, the notes, and the feeling, that off-putting feeling since leaving the hospital, all seemed to point to something larger at play. To this day, I still don't know everything which happened that night on the mountains, and how much of my experience was real or not. All I know is that it changed me, and that I can't ignore the feeling that there is still more to discover. The questions remain and the mystery unsolved.